Hello and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast that has the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. We just wrapped up our 1991 season, and we're about to enter our 1982 season. With me to celebrate that is Mike. Mike, are you excited for this shit?
Yeah, I love the chronological order we go on here on the season's Move of the Year. What makes the most logical sense after 91? 82, baby.
82, you got to, right?
82, you got to. That's what they say.
And how we'll get to this in the real season. This is just like a special preview show. But how old were you?
I was negative in my dad's balls. 4.
Cool. That makes me feel better. The reason why we are doing this special preview show is because of the 64 movies that are entering the bracket, 14 of them are horror movies. And
that's why Greg's not here.
That's why Greg isn't here, because he can't even hear people discuss horror movies. He's going to have to read the Wikipedia about this episode later tomorrow. But, Mike, I figured that as our resident horror expert, that you would have what it takes to sort of go through these horror movies and preview them.
So when it's me, you, and Greg, sure. But I got to tell you, Ryan, for 1982, with, what did you say, 16 fucking horror movies, I feel like we should bring in actual maybe experts. I watched Scream once, all right?
That's what qualifies for you as an expert on this show. But why don't we call in a couple of our friends? From Los Angeles, California, the former host of the Superhero Show, the current host of Have a Nice Tay, it's Taylor Wilfright.
Ooh, spooky, scary. I'm sorry, Greg, if you've heard that even through the ether and you're crying. I'm very sorry. I'm just thinking about him knowing about this show happening and like cuddling underneath a blanket, and I feel bad.
I mean, he is pissing his pants currently because you just did that.
And he doesn't know why.
Mike, would you say that Taylor is enough of an expert to help us on this journey?
I think if we were talking about like 4 horror movies in the bracket, sure, Taylor would be fine.
4 horror movies, and they're all the dumbest ones.
Yeah, they all
have part
19.
6 in their title.
But no, I think, again, we need a legitimate professional for this.
From Los Angeles, California, the horror queen of the internet, the co-host of Aughtsterion, a movie about millennial horror movies. We're going to have to go back way in time for this. It is Jordan Crucchiola.
There. I was wondering what shape that was going to take, and I can't believe you didn't say the Botcast, since I've been on your pod to talk about the Botcast.
Yeah, have I been on that show, though?
No, you haven't.
Then I'm not talking about it. I'm not talking about it.
It's a real twist that I'm podcasting with you, Taylor, on this before you do join us on the episode of the Botcast that we're gonna do together.
Yeah, a little sneak preview of another podcast that I will also
You heard
be
it
on.
here first.
Yeah.
Did you guys know what?
Yeah, this is cross-pollination.
You guys know what movie came out in 1982?
Blade Runner?
It's Blade Runner.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about Blade Runner.
Why not?
Taylor and Jordan, the first thing I want to ask you guys about is just the amount, before we get into the specifics, the amount of fucking horror movies that are on this list in 1982.
So many.
I know logically why that is. It basically like video stores start to open. We need content. These are cheap. Let's get VHS tapes out there. But that's a boring answer. What is it about the early 80s where we had this fucking huge boom?
Well, I mean, horror is in a boom in the early 1980s. You have the burgeoning VOD market that's going to start hitting like at this time, but like really in earnest around the end of the decade. But you have the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse who have reinvented the genre, creating what we essentially know as modern horror now with Wes Craven, Tobe Hooper, John Carpenter, George A. Romero, and you have that starting in like 1974 with Last House on the Left, Texas Chainsaw Massacre continuing on with Halloween in 1979, and by that time you have yourself a whole goddamn industry. And into the mid-80s we'll get kind of kick it up in the slasher, movement again with Nightmare on Elm Street and obviously sleepaway camps in there, and what is the Jason movies? Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th's in there. So horror is an honest to God industry now, and it is a mass production industry. Getting to be a mass production industry at this point in time.
Yeah. And to add on to that, like, I think
Yes.
specifically for everything that Jordan said, obviously, I was absolutely also going to say. But I think specifically the amount.
You've been going to movie night longer than me, Taylor. You could say all of this, I'm sure.
Yeah. But I also think like the percentage of horror movies that make up in like the early 80s specifically is going to be a result of, as Jordan said, the horror boom itself. But also like the specific, like other things hadn't quite cropped up yet. Like the late 80s, like big dumb action movies hadn't quite come up yet. And we also didn't quite have, you know, like 4 to 5 like critically acclaimed Japanese animated movies every year yet. So it's like still like in the period where they're like, this is what we've got, baby. So we're just gonna like I think of the movies of 1982, that's gonna be like a huge bulk of them.
And I think too, it's a very what we find with the reinvention of the genre through things like Halloween and Friday the 13th is that horror has always been a genre of remix and like taking the sort of same foundational conceits and then working around them with sort of different window dressing, different villains. And I think what you have in the movies that were being done very lo-fi and creating these sort of new archetypes of horror cinema, Last House, Halloween, et cetera, you're creating a blueprint that is extremely replicable. It is you can create an entire housing development of horror with the same 4 floor plans. This is the Taco Bell menu of food. This is the same few ingredients wrapped different ways, and it can be done on the cheap, and it's extremely effective. So,
yeah.
And it puts, you know, and it's a communal kind of cinema that is unlike kind of any other. It's fun to get people in a theater for it, but then it's fun to go rent that, bring it home, and then watch it with your friends. Maybe your family, if it's a bold family. But yeah, I think you have something that's really scalable in terms of just volume of production on the cheap.
And I think that a lot of non-horror fans don't understand this part that you said, Jordan, but the Xerox ability about it is a feature, not a bug.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite things about horror. Straight up one of my favorite things about horror. I love that.
Yeah, it's all about like, what did you do with the wallpaper?
Yeah.
Ryan.
In the house, yeah. Yeah, Mike.
I'm really glad. I would have said the 80s, cocaine and Reagan.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad we brought Jordan and Taylor on.
I mean,
cocaine and Reagan is a huge part of the horror movement in the 1980s, so you would not have been wrong about that.
And a huge part of me and Mike's friendship, for sure. Mike, can you... Now, when we did 85, we had a season, like a bonus season, dedicated to the horror of 85 because there was a ton there. Taylor was on that show. He admirably came in and did Nightmare on Elm Street 2 when Sam Wyman said, I am never going to fucking talk about that movie again.
Which one
and
was
he
that
was right to fucking say it.
Which movie?
Christ.
Was it that one, or was it a Friday the 13th that was all about a toilet? You guys talked about a toilet scene more than anything else in that episode.
Toilet scene, I don't remember.
I know Amityville, It's About Time has a bunch of toilets on the side of the street, so that might be it. If you guys talked about that movie at some point for some reason.
The best Amityville.
Yeah.
Sam on that season came in and talked about Fright Night and taught us that it is just as queer, if not more, than Nightmare 2. So,
yeah, Nightmare 2 is queer horror for straight people, as I'm sure Sam Wyman could have said on this podcast and would say again.
Mike, our reputation, besides that 85 bonus season, is do we have any horror movies? I'm thinking of like Jaws and Addams Family.
Yeah, that was pretty spooky.
Great stuff.
No,
like a top 8 movie.
I mean, depending on what horrifies you, but I think the dissolution of marriage and aspiring to be the best you can be. So I think our very first movie of the year, 1999's Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman family romp, was pretty horrifying.
Yeah, I can see
Eyes Wide Shut. I remembered it the whole time.
I was gonna say,
I wasn't
this is
trying
an
to build
Eyes
up.
Wide Shut
I wasn't trying to
summary,
remember the name.
I don't know if this is going to surprise you guys, but I would say that we have 2 horror movies that we're not going to spend a lot of time on that are locks in our top 8. because 1982 gave us The Thing and Poltergeist.
Oh,
and
hells yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how we get out of 1982 with talking about those major ones. Real quickly, I'm going to hear all about Mike's thoughts about those two movies later, but Jordan and Taylor, where do those stand in your guys' own echelon?
Can I admit that I've never actually seen the Poltergeist all the way through? Yeah.
Good for you.
Good
for you.
I've never seen it all the way through. I've seen bits of it when it would play on like TMC in the middle of the afternoon for no reason.
Yeah. Wait,
but-
are little kids home alone right now? Let's put on Poltergeist. Let's make them watch it.
It was like that or Dragon Ball Z were my options to watch. And I was like, well, I've already seen this episode. Piccolo gets his arm torn off. Let's check out what's happening over there. So I've seen the exorcism bit, so I know enough about the Poltergeist to know like, all right, yeah.
I can one up you, Taylor. I've never seen The Thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
you are missing out on that one.
That's what I've heard.
I have a very steadfast policy to not you haven't seen that. Fuck you. If that's your response to like anything, if somebody tells me they haven't seen Jennifer's Body, like what I consider like my life exists before and after that movie, okay, then you didn't fucking see that movie. People arrange their time differently. They have different value systems. Anytime I have a conversation with Margot about a movie that she hasn't seen, I try to just be very like, well, how exciting that you get to watch that movie at some point.
See,
because I remember how glad I was when I did. So like, great. You know who's watching The Thing? Fucking plenty of people.
Yeah.
Tons of people. Nobody needs to be told they need to watch The Thing. They know it. They'll get to it when they get to it.
Yeah.
So
I will advertise, if you haven't played the Thing board game, a fantastic board game as well.
So maybe that'll be a bonus episode.
Yeah, cross promotion.
Yeah. Let's record
my
us playing a
input-
board game.
my input on The Thing and Poltergeist is they're obviously great movies. Poltergeist was absolutely a formative, frightening movie for me when I was growing up, but not necessarily because of the poltergeists themselves, but because Carol Ann, to me, is terrifying.
Yeah, she's scary.
That little girl who gave wonderful performances in each of the Poltergeist films that she was in, she died very young, tragically. She was an excellent little actress, and she scared me more than anything in those Poltergeist movies. Obviously, the clown was a big deal for me. John Carpenter's The Thing is amazing. Kurt Russell's super hot in it. But for me, the top Carpenter movie of all time is Big Trouble in Little China. And so for me, The Thing exists in the shadow of Big Trouble in Little China.
I'm so excited for the Poltergeist show. I am assuming that there will be one because somebody had the idea of let's get the director of E.T. and the director of Texas Chainsaw Massacre together and let's see what happens.
I'm throwing Coach.
And
Craig T.
throwing
Nelson.
Coach Craig T. Nelson. The T stands for
I think
Coach.
that's an interesting thing about Spielberg and the way that his streams have crossed other filmmakers over the years, in like that same way that Martin Scorsese ultimately ended up making the remake of Cape Fear, but that was originally supposed to be Steven Spielberg, and Martin Scorsese was originally supposed to make Schindler's List. And the two of them were like, this isn't right. And so each of them ended up making the movies that they were certainly most appropriately built to make. But the crossover of Steven Spielberg and some of the most harrowing titles of the 80s and 90s. Fun facts.
If we go chalk, which means if our top 8 movies all put in the bracket by letterbox make it, then so Poltergeist is in, The Thing is in, but then also, I don't even know where to begin here. I have not seen this movie, but correct me if I'm wrong, that John Carpenter's Halloween was supposed to be an anthology series.
Yes.
Michael Myers
Yeah.
blew up so hard that they were like, well, let's put him in the sequel. And then for the third one, they said, let's get back to the anthology thing. Taylor, what the fuck is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch?
Oh, baby. 4 more days till
Besides
Halloween.
maybe the other best Halloween.
It's so good because you don't have like he's a big dude and he's got a knife and a mask. No, this one's all about like like weird like Irish people who have decided to be witches.
That is scary.
They're like turning people into bugs. A woman is like going to to her father's funeral. She packs lingerie for some reason, and it comes in handy. It's so the whole thing is just about
you never know when you're gonna meet Tom Adkins.
Yeah. The whole movie is just like, how do we figure out what's going on with these weird Halloween masks? A question that like no one cares about, but it's so much more fun and like legitimately creepy. And I think that Halloween 3 is the best of the Halloween movies, but I don't like the Halloween movies.
You know what I would so much rather have seen than Evil Dies Tonight? And you know what I give so much more of a shit about than Tommy coming back to the Halloween franchise?
Tommy.
Is what's going on with these masks.
Yes.
This is just like this is Halloween as a Twilight Zone episode. A really good Twilight Zone episode.
The high point of Halloween Kills when we watched it was they have a throwaway bit where some of the masks from Halloween 3 are put on dead bodies, and I was like, yes, pay homage. Pay homage to the good one.
Were you a little bummed that the heroes didn't put on those masks to team up and fight Mike Myers with their powers?
A little bit, yeah. But that's just, my hardcore podcast pedigree shining through.
What if in the next one Michael turns around and there's a little Shamrock logo on the shape mask in the last of the ending trilogy of the resurrected Halloween franchise.
And then he explodes into snakes and bugs and shit for no reason.
Yes, absolutely.
This movie is legendary, but it seemed to me sort of legendary in that way that Troll 2 is legendary. Of like, you won't believe this bullshit. This is insane.
It's not Troll 2. Like, it's not incompetently made. It's just wild. It's just wild, and I think it has a bad reputation because people know the Halloween franchise as this is Michael Myers, and so if you watch that as Halloween 3 right in like the fucking middle of the series, and it's like Michael Myers isn't here, we're not going to talk about him, we're not going to mention him, it just takes place on Halloween. And it's like, yeah, I understand why people would be perplexed and be like, this sucks, bring back the guy in the William Shatner mask, but they're wrong.
Yeah, they are. And it's a funny thing watching, like, you go back in the movies that are decades old at this point, and you watch them, and you're like, and I feel the same way about another title that I'm sure we're discussing tonight. Just like, wait, why didn't people like this? Why does this have a bad reputation? Guys, do you realize this is like literally every other fucking horror movie that came out in 1982? Like where's the line? Like, sure, there's The Thing and like Poltergeist, which are like, that's an upper echelon of horror cinema right there. But as far as like the mass pack of 1982 horror output, any of the movies like on this list that I was considering for review, I was like, none of these are dramatically different or better than the other ones. They're all a good fucking time, and they all look pretty much the same. Like, I just like, who are these dipshits who are like, nah, man, this one's the bad cheesy Halloween. It's like, I'm sorry, what? Like, everything after 1 is a cheesy Halloween. Like, are you kidding me? I cannot. I simply can't stand it. This movie's a hoot. This movie's a kick. I
don't know, Mike. So what do you do? It's the 7th seed. So I think that there's definitely been a turnaround.
Wait, is it really the 7th seed?
Wow.
764
of all movies in 1982. The Halloween 3 is 7th.
So what do we think? What do you think the odds are of this making it to the Elite 8?
I say 7th seed. It sounds like it's 1982. 7th seal. It's going in. Let's make the 8 all horror, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm for that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that hard. Like, they're available. This next one, one of my, like, worries or wonders about horror fans is, like, do you guys really know what the numbers mean at the end of titles? Like, do you really know what Friday the 13th Part 3 is as opposed to 4 as opposed to 2? Let me read you guys before you start. This is the description of the movie. This is the plot. An idyllic summer turns into a nightmare of unspeakable terror for yet another group of naive counselors. Whoa, no fucking way. Are you shitting me right now?
Right. I'm not one of those people who can I'm not anytime like the little ranking bug goes around on Twitter among horror people, it's like, this is the ranking. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, unless Jason's going to not Manhattan or to hell or to space, I don't know the order.
Yeah, this is the original Fast and the Furious franchise.
I remember some of them. Like, I do remember that.
It's some.
Like I do remember that 3 is the one where he gets the hockey mask because he doesn't have the hockey mask in 2.
What does he have?
Right. Okay.
He just has like a burlap sack. Like
Leonard Nimoy's mask.
Yeah. He got the other one and then they swapped. But yeah, because in the first one, Jason's not actually in it; it's his mom. And then the second one,
Jason's mother. Again, I've seen Scream.
Yeah, you've seen Scream. And then the second one, he has a burlap sack. And then the third one, in like a barn attic, he finds the hockey mask and is like, oh, well, I'll put that on. And then that's the thing that everyone knows him for.
If it was like Ghostbusters Afterlife style, where everything is biblical and worshipped, is there like gold light and like angelic tones as he reaches towards the hockey mask? Because we all know this is going to be very important from now on.
There's not. It's not like he's in an attic. It's a little dusty. There's like sunbeams like filtering through. But that's the only reason that I know roughly which one 3 is, because I remember, that's the one where he gets the thing. After that, as Jordan said, in between that and when he goes to Manhattan or hell, I don't know what any of those are. Like,
no,
you couldn't, or to space if it's X.
I do not know where Jason is in 6. I do not know where Michael is in 6.
No,
I know where he is in 8. I'm pretty sure, because I love Halloween Resurrections. And I think that's what Resurrection is. I don't remember what number H2O is, but I like H2O. Like, I know them by when they get extra names. I can associate them with things. Like, I'm good for that. But
Friday the 13th,
I know Dream Warriors is Freddy's 3. I don't know chronologically where Freddy v. Jason falls in the order. I don't even know where the remake falls in the order of how many Friday the 13th there have been. So
to not have a subtitle,
I'm not pedantic.
To just say part 3, that's crazy. Like, you're putting a lot on your audience to remember. Like, oh, that was in part 3 and not the Dream Warriors or Goes to Hell.
It's a bullshit thing people do. I cannot stand it.
Tell me that it's Hobbs and Shaw in this one.
That movie did us the service of just calling itself Hobbs and Shaw.
Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th presents part 3. Like, why not do that?
Yeah.
There we go. As long as it's the only one that says presents, so that way I can know it's the one that is presented.
Jordan, you mentioned the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Mm-hmm. One of them was George A. Romero. He did strike in 1982 with, and I'm going to say this about a lot of movies tonight, a VHS cover that I remember distinctly.
Yeah,
like
big time.
I remember wandering through these aisles of video stores when I was a kid and putting I didn't watch any of them. All of these went into my spank bank for later. Creep Show.
Yep.
Inspired by the EC comics of the 1950s, George A. Romero. Did George A. Romero in 1982 lose a couple miles off of his fastball?
I think Creep Show is as good as an anthology. I feel like can be. It's an anthology. Like, your mileage may vary, and
I think that's the real takeaway from Creep Show is like it's another one of those that I don't think I've ever like sat down and was like, I'll watch all of Creep Show. But like if you cut it up into little bits and you put it as like an amuse-bouche in front of some other stuff.
If Sam has put it in Happy Birthday Barbie somewhere.
Of course. Yeah. But an anthology is hard, and especially if you're competing against the best movies of any given year, it's a lot harder to watch an anthology and be like, yeah, this has a through line that is like good enough to compare with The Thing. Like,
Now, Mike, have we ever kicked a movie out of the bracket that starred both Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson?
No, those are right up our buttholes.
The cast of Creep Show is unbelievable, and anytime I see an old Leslie Nielsen performance, I am reminded that, oh yeah, Jordan, if you really sat down and thought about it, Leslie Nielsen's probably one of your favorite actors of all fucking time. Because I grew up with spoof Leslie Nielsen. I grew up with Naked Gun Leslie Nielsen, and I loved those movies. So when I got older and started watching like older Leslie Nielsen titles and realized how good he was at being an absolute sadistic bastard in like The Day of the Animals and something like this, that guy had a range. And it's incredible that he was so good as a doofus in his final act of his career when he was a villain for the ages in like the 70s and the 80s. I love Leslie Nielsen.
And then it all came together at the end when he was both dead and loving it. Have you guys
dead and loving it?
Some art say best performance.
Nobody says.
Best film.
Have you guys seen the clips of him floating around the internet of him on like talk shows back in the day where the host will be asking a question and he'll just fart and then just shake his head like, no, don't mention it.
Like, he will sincerely, it's not like with the assist of a gizmo of some kind. He will sincerely fart on air.
He may be getting a gizmo assist, but it doesn't sound like that, and the hosts react like it is real as shit. Please look up Leslie Nielsen farting.
That's outstanding. That is outstanding.
The anthology always has the problem of this one was good, this one was bad, these two were fine, right? Like,
Yeah.
And
That's what makes the original VHS and VHS 2, for the most part, really, exceptional, particularly in, like, the anthologized horror canon, is that, like, those stand on their own as, like, excellent, cohesive movies, and you get that, like, 10% of the time you have an anthology collection in horror.
this next movie.
Famously, Sam Weinman is a part of the December anthology, and he will be the first person to tell you, don't watch December.
No.
There are 26 segments, and it's like 2.5 hours long. He's like, you don't need to put yourself through
There's
that.
like 5 good ones.
Yeah, you watch Vivian Vaughn's and you watch Sam Weinman's.
My favorite band only tours around October, the Decemberists, where they're like scary Weird Owls with Decemberist songs.
Scary Weird Al.
Jesus Christ.
It makes normal Weird Al so much more benign.
Normal.
Like, he's not a scary
Normal
man,
Weird
but he's-
Al.
Normal Weird Al. And then, of course, there's Normal Al, a guy who just sings regular
The
songs.
most fucked up of all.
Hannibal.
This next movie, which is it has a pretty high seed, we are looking at 24. To me, probably looks the most like a 30 Rock, or like if you were just going to parody horror movies. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard the tagline, "Close your eyes for a second and sleep forever." It's the Slumber Party Massacre. 4 scantily clad, pajamaed women on the poster with a guy with a giant drill in front of them. What do we know about this movie?
Long tagline.
Well, Ryan, I'm glad that you pointed out that it seems like a 30 Rock parody, because it was originally written as a parody of horror movies, and then I think very late in the production process they switched it and were like, we'll just do it like a straight horror movie, but it will be very funny, and it is very funny.
This movie is written and directed, I'm pretty sure, they're both lesbians. It is directed by Amy Holden Jones. It's written by Rita Mae Brown, noted feminist, like, thinker Rita Mae Brown. There is a copy of the book Ruby Fruit Jungle, like, on the bedside table in the beginning of the movie. Like, this movie is an active commentary piece that got chopped and screwed when whoever gave the money to make it was probably like, we thought it was titties, and then it wasn't. So then they made they made the movie different than what it was supposed to be. And again, this is the one that I referenced before, where it's like, I do not understand the malign reputation of something like this, where you watch it now in 2022 and it's absolutely indistinguishable from other 1982 mass pack horror movies. Again, not The Thing, not Poltergeist, not like that, but any of the 8 that, like, I have sitting next to me here that I'm looking at, it's like, yeah, that's what these movies were then. Like, there is obviously the extremely changing into your 90s in the living room moment that's like, I love this choice, honestly. Like, if you're gonna put the hat on the hat, you might as well not even have them in a bedroom. Put them in the living room, getting naked and changing into their underwear. And, like, the killer is fantastic. Coach Jana is awesome. Like, this is not a final girl movie. There are multiple final girls in this movie, and that is not something we saw routinely at the time. Like, this movie is still doing a fair amount that is subversive in the genre for the time, even as it was bastardized into what it ultimately ended up being that was not the intent of Rita Mae Brown.
And I think the giant power drill should have become like an iconic horror symbol, like the chainsaw. Like, come on, guys. It's a giant power drill. It spins, so you've got the spinny motion. You get to, like, stab and, like, do, like, a whole, like,
this movie, people are stabbed, drilled, sliced,
You know what?
abrasioned by this thing. You can do it all with this drill.
Taylor, do you know what's so much worse than is wee? Like, that's so much scarier.
That's why people hate the dentist.
Yes, he's just
You're
somebody
not
who's
wrong.
about to start a slumber party massacre, that dentist.
Well, it's important to note too that, like, this, like, that when the killer, when there's, like, he finally vocalizes at the end and he's being like, why are you doing this? We didn't do anything to you. Why? And he just looks at her and he's like, I love you. I love you. Like, do you know how much you have to love a person to do this to them? Like, this is incel horror. Before we talked about fucking incel horror, like, the way that this set up a very specific kind of obsessive, scary, villainous man stalking, menacing, abusing women is actually still as, like, I watch that now and I'm like, this guy and the way he's talking and the things he's saying are as scary as if you put this in a movie right now. Like, it carries over. It holds up.
Do you think that's why it was maligned when it came out? Is it made dudes who liked horror go, oh, but what? No, I treat women fine. What?
But it might work for us.
I treat women fine.
I think
I don't know if it's a thing of, like, I'm very curious about the idea of, like, where's the line between the sort of maybe subconscious derision of something like that and the conscious lack of recognition of what's going on there at all in a time when, you know, you're having to read, like, David J. Skal to be reading in between the lines of horror, and it's still just the lowest genre of them all, unless it rises to the level of something like what a Ridley Scott can make or a John Carpenter can make. But I do wonder about that. Like, what did the 1982 audience really think of that guy?
And Taylor, let me ask you this: like, do the jokes work? Can you tell what was a initially intended joke in this parody movie? Is there anything left?
Yeah, it's been a little bit since I actually watched it, so I can't think of the jokes off the top of my head. But my enduring memory of it was this is a fun, funny movie. Like, they do leave stuff. Like, if you're meeting the movie on its level, then
right.
it is insanely funny. Like, they left a lot of that stuff in. It's just they moved away from, like, it's not Scary Movie 3. It's, you know. it's closer to a Scream in, like, putting a hat on a hat.
Have you guys?
And we didn't really have a ton of language around meta horror at the time either. So
yeah, Return to Horror High hadn't come out yet, so we didn't know how to, like, talk about it.
And everyone knows that there's a Taylor before Return to Horror High came out and a Taylor after Return to Horror High came out.
It is to him what Jennifer's Body is to me, clearly.
Do you guys notice this just in general, though, with movies, that this whole taking it at its level, in a lot of ways, we are getting better? Like, Jordan, you're a notorious bassist, as I call you, and that's a bay racist, not like you play the bass. And I feel like that if 15 years ago Ambulance came out, everybody would have been like, well, it's not good at all. But
the amount of anger I have had about this exact conversation is, a friend of mine was like, oh, what? So, like, people aren't allowed to like Michael Bay now? I was like, no, I listened to them before they were a cool fucking person. Yeah. I'm saying that this movie isn't different than whatever else he's made. It is just now de rigueur to be like, oh, it's not Marvel, it's the answer to blockbusters. It's like, well, you didn't go to the theater and fucking support it, so I don't want to hear it from you. I have had to apologize for and rationalize my enjoyment of Michael Bay movies for far too fucking long. For anybody to tell me that this is not a recent uptick in, like, oh man, like, Michael Bay, like, kind of go through, it's like, this was not wildly above Six Underground, you dicks.
I hate that.
Tell me why.
I hate
this is Jordan's Mouse Hunt.
I hate that Jordan's mic is tethered, or it's like stationary, because she should have it in her hand and Def Comedy jamming around the room when she talks about Ambulance. But I do think that, like, it is. Would you say de rigueur, the soup of the day? It is now officially more okay to like movies on their own level in a way that it wasn't before. And that's why Halloween 3 is the 7th seed in this fucking bracket.
Completely agree, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's deservedly placed.
I do recognize that Michael Bay loves racist caricature, and there are a lot of problems with this man's fucking filmography, and that is absolutely a conversation that people should have, while also accepting that he is one of the most incredible spectacle filmmakers that's ever existed.
All right. We're going to do one more, and then we're going to take a break. Here is the tagline. The tenant in room 7 is very small, very twisted, and very mad.
Stuart Little?
Is this Mouse Hunt?
Yeah, it's this.
Fucking Taylor, not every movie has to star a mouse.
I got mouse on the brain.
This is my pick. This is my outside pick for the one that I want the most.
Oh, okay, now I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's Frank Henenlotter's Basket Case.
Basket Case.
I have
what a small wonder this movie is.
This is one that I can say I have not seen and know only I know the general plot idea of Basket Case, but not enough to not confuse it with Stuart Little.
What is the general plot of Basket Case?
A pair of conjoined twins are separated when they are teenagers. It was considered a too risky procedure, I think, medically to have attempted to complete when they were babies. But the thing about these conjoined twins is that one of them is a fully developed, child, as you would recognize them walking down the street. The other is mostly a mass that grows out of the side of the child.
It's the original Malignant.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a Gabriel with arms and a face that takes a sort of like blob shape. And after the excision occurs, somehow the mass twin lives, and the fully developed twin resolves to like keep and carry him around for their lives and in a basket. And we meet him when he moves to the big city and sets up in a single room occupancy in a shitty hotel in New York. And it turns out the tumor twin has a thirst for blood and is extremely jealous of his brother's time and how he spends it. Oh, and they are also on a mission to avenge the doctors that cut him from the side of his brother, because their plan was to they put him in the trash. They were like, we're going to kill this tumor. We're killing this kid. And so they rescued him, and now they're like, now we're going to kill the doctors that tried to kill you.
So what Babe needed 2 movies for...
about this.
Oh, the crazy sex files of all time, where the fucking family keeps their mom under the bed and has sex with her. So what the Babe series needed 2 movies to do, this movie does in 1. The reason I'm pumped for this movie is because when we did the 85 bonus series, my favorite movie by far was Reanimator, and this sort of gives me those vibes.
This would play in a really sensical double with Frankenhooker. Like, it's that kind of style of horror movie. And while it would not be my favorite of the 82 offerings, I think what could put it in a bracket ascension, if it did, would be that it's so deeply 80s. It is so specifically like this moment in time, the way horror was made, the sensibility that horror could have, the audacity of it, the ways in which the acting is shitty, like the way it's like, just get people to do this, okay? Like, and the truly soul-quaking scream that the basket twin emits. He can't talk. He speaks telepathically to his brother. Sure. And the only sounds he makes are like grumbles and full man screams. Like this thing screams like the bear demon in Annihilation.
Oh no.
It's my favorite
it's
noise.
Like that, but a slightly more human. The bear scream. It is there will be just, it feels like endless minutes long in scenes where he's just like will not stop while he is mauling a person to death, and they are screaming with him.
Well, now I'm going to make sure we do it,
that.
because we need a new drop for the drop mix.
The reason I want to see this movie too is because it's my favorite way of not just writing horror movies, but any movie, of 2 people sitting around and like somebody says, basket case, that could be a title. And the other one like, I got it. Head in a basket. Let's do it.
And it is everybody, you know what? Frank, I'm looking up Head and Lauder now. He directed Frankenhooker, which is exactly why this movie feels like Frankenhooker. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. God, other credits include from this Basket Case 3, Bad Biology, Brain Damage.
Okay, he did do Brain Damage. As you were explaining the plot, I was like, this sounds a lot like Brain Damage.
You know a Head and Lauder movie when you hear it.
I was like, surely he didn't also do Brain Damage.
Surely he couldn't have. Everybody is giving so much their all in this movie. I really respect it. And I also really appreciate how, like, it seems like it's a bunch of creeps who live in this motel at first. And, like, it's a bunch of, like, you waiting for people to, like, scam him and be dirtbags. When actually, like, it's a bunch of weirdos, Island of Misfit Toys situation where they all kind of take care of each other and look out for each other. It's actually really sweet in that way. It's very surprising how, like, bonded that little community is together.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to move into a speed round because we have so many fucking horror movies left to do. All right, guys, there's too many fucking horror movies here, so we're going to move into a different game. We're going to bracket it up, and you 3 are going to decide what... Yeah, have you ever heard of those before?
Unfamiliar.
It's mostly for sports, but we use them for movies because we're super original. I'm going to put 2 movies against each other. You guys are going to decide which one we're going to talk about. This, little duo is hilarious because of pets. It's the 28th seed Cat People versus the 29th seed White Dog. Now, White Dog is directed by...
Gasoline. That's Cat People, right?
White Dog is directed by Hollywood superstar, veteran Samuel Fuller. Cat People is a remake of the classic horror movie. Anybody know anything about these two?
Cat People.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it holds up better than you'd think it would for a remake of Cat People, which is such a genteel 1940s horror film.
Ancient. Doesn't exist.
Ancient.
In a way, it's the original Jaws, probably because of budget, but they just refuse to show you these cat people turning into cat people. And it's so much fucking scarier because this is the original one. I haven't seen this one. Mike, this one, just so you know, is movie of the year favorite. Paul Schrader directing a horror movie.
Oh, fuck yeah. We got it. I
fucking hate Paul Schrader.
Love Paul Schrader. How many cat buttholes are in this movie? And is Skimbleshanks the railway cat in this?
Oh, listen. If you're giving me that, that's all I care about.
If Paul Schrader gave Taylor Skimbleshanks the railway cat, I bet that would turn its front. I don't like Paul Schrader that much either, Taylor. I think he's who gives a shit.
The sentence Paul Schrader gave Taylor Skimbleshanks.
Okay.
Okay, well, hold on. I only agree on one of those. But yeah, Paul Schrader, whatever. He hasn't made a good movie in like 30 years, but it's fine. The one thing
First Reformed
is fine.
First Reformed is a movie that is pretentious and is a philosophy 101 class he accidentally walked backwards into, saying some things that other philosophers have already said. He has nothing to say about it. It's not interesting. It's a bad movie.
Mike, you do have to remember that Taylor and Jordan like movies. We like films.
Yes.
So,
The one thing I do know about
you're boring.
The one thing I do know about Cat People is it has that David Bowie song that plays in Inglourious Bastards, and that's the only thing I know about Cat People.
Cat People is queer horror, and queer horror will always get the vote.
That thing that Paul F. Tompkins has where there's like you can't hear a certain amount of syllables in a row without putting it to a song. My only one is the theme from Goldfinger, so it's impossible for me not to say Cat People.
which I have recently been telling people is not that different from Moon River.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It does sound like Moon River.
If you're singing them without the accompaniment, no one can tell which one you're singing.
No, that was what Ryan just did was very much Moon River.
Yeah.
All right. This one is so much better. These two movies I want to make the Elite Eight. These two movies deserve bonus episodes, Mike. The first one is Q the Winged Serpent. Before you talk, the second one is the creator of the superhero craze that we are currently in, starring Adrienne Barbeau. It's Swamp Thing.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Q the Winged Serpent. Q the Winged Serpent.
Are you calling for the Winged Serpent
Yeah, that's
to
what I
come?
like about that. It's the best movie title.
Cue the Winged Serpent.
Please cue the Winged Serpent.
It's a full
Give me
sentence.
the Winged Serpent.
And it's a name.
I feel like this is a movie like The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T that I've been hearing about since I was a kid and have just never found or figured out how to watch.
I think it might be on Shudder right now.
But also, I've never taken the time to find it. But
Okay, got it.
Is it good? Is it fun?
It's fun. It's absolutely fun. And the fact of the Winged Serpent is like in a bit. It's sort of similar with Basket Case too. It's actually like because most of the time when you're watching Basket Case, the basket twin, it's human puppet arms, and you're just like seeing from the point of view of him, and so you're seeing the arms move, and you're seeing him manipulate things. But every once in a while, it pulls back, and it's like we've got to let the people see the whole whole thing, and it becomes stop motion animation of the basket twin. And you're like, oh, wow, they really animated this. And with Q the Winged Serpent, like, you really get that serpent in there. And so, yeah, I would go that. But, like, I get the Swamp Thing has a big place in the history.
Yeah. It's something else that can get canceled after one season. After one episode, excuse me.
Q is directed by horror legend Larry Cohen, creator of The Stuff, It's Alive, another fucking movie poster VHS box burned into my brain with that little cradle with the monster hand coming out. Swamp Thing. It's directed by Wes Craven. I am just being told by my producers, so I did not know that.
Wow.
Hey, Wes Craven Swamp Thing, thank you for showing up, but it's clearly Q the Winged Serpent.
Yeah. I've got to go with that. I
feel like
can't
Q
turn
is
my
moving on.
back.
Now, your 48th seed is Next of Kin, which I thought was a Patrick Swayze drama from the 90s. But this is different. It's going up against, and Jordan, we'll start with you. Well, whoever I ask, Jordan, you're just going to start anyway. But it's Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. What the fuck is that?
But you put some respect on the name of Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, which is also known as Night Warning, I believe, is the alternate title for that. So it's possible that you've heard of Night Warning, but
Night Warning.
Don't know Butcher Baker. Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. First of all, Next of Kin is generally fine. I like it. I actually rewatched it coming into this. I was like, oh yeah, I've heard this is a good little movie. It's got Jarrett Jack in it, who, if you watch newer horror movies, you might know from Wolf Creek, the really fucking scary Outback murderer, old guy, old Outback guy. He also was he an icon of Aughtsploitation. Worth your time, and also one of the most beautiful, there's a scene where the lead woman is runs out of a room screaming, and it is done in slow motion, and the camera tracks away and above her in such a way. It's one of actually maybe the best shots that's ever happened in all of horror, truly.
Yeah.
But Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker is a subversive, queer, take you on a wild ride, creep up on you classic. Sam Weinman told me to watch this movie, and I texted him a third of the way through, and I was like, the homophobia jumped out, and he was like, text me at the end of the movie. And I texted him at the end of the movie. I was like, is this the most activist gay horror movie that was made up to the point of 1982? It strings you along the entire time thinking you are watching something that is just an amalgamation of stereotypes that are putting queer monsters in front of you again, and it feels really tired. And then the way it maneuvers through the final act of the movie is this is an incredible fucking piece of commentary, and are you telling me this is where we were the entire time in this film? And the crucial part of this is that it is anchored by the performance of Susan Tyrrell.
Yes.
Cult B movie queen. I first experienced Susan Tyrrell as Ramona Ricketts in John Waters' Crybaby. And this woman knows no bounds to her madness on screen in such a way that, I think that's just who Susan Tyrrell is. It is the story of a sweet boy whose parents die horrifically in a car accident at the beginning of the movie, and he is taken in by his aunt, who develops a very strong affection for him as he is coming into his own sexual maturation. And we start to learn over the course of the movie what Aunt Susan Tyrrell would do to keep her sweet nephew close to her. And Butcher Baker is fucking outstanding. Can't say enough about it.
Yeah.
Susan Tyrrell, for people who are actually into films instead of just movies, she played Midge Montana in Big Top Pee-wee. So that'll probably connect it for everybody.
What were you going to say, Taylor, about this movie?
I would say Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker fucking rules. It's dope as hell. It's the obvious choice. I will also say for Next of Kin, I haven't seen this one specifically, but every Aughtsploitation movie I've ever seen has made me go partway through, holy shit, is this great?
Right? Yeah, that is the cute, accurate response to Aughtsploitation.
Yeah. It's always a movie you've never fucking heard of, and you walk out going, that's the best movie I've seen in 3 years.
Yeah, you're like, does anybody else in the world watch this shit?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of great stuff going on down there.
Yeah.
I don't understand how anybody titles a movie like that and then also has Night Warning. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Just
Night Warning.
Yeah.
Basic ass title instead of Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? That is a perfect title.
It's a wonderful film. I've rarely been so surprised by a movie and been slapped in the face for my own assumptions about it.
Mike, before we get to the final battle, I want to get what you think based on Taylor and Jordan, how these are going to do it. Let's start with Halloween 3. Does that have a shot of making it based on what they talked about?
I think so. We have to get past the Greg. I'd say it has a shot at a bonus episode.
It has to get past the Greg.
Yeah, Greg's a strong defender on the horror movies.
I think, if I'm being honest, that Friday the 13th Part 3, I don't know if that stands a chance.
No, that's
Creep Show, the anthology thing that Taylor brought up about how are we going to do that? Slumber Party Massacre, though. Mike?
Yeah, I know how to argue, and Greg won't listen to this because it's too spooky. Anytime we just say like queer horror or meta, he'll be like, "Oh, I guess I can't say no to that."
That's allyship. That's allyship.
It was a really good Greg. Also,
It was. Basket Case. I'm super pumped about.
Yeah,
Where
that sounds
are you
fucking
at?
phenomenal.
When it cuts away from the basket twin, which I don't think twins should call each other the good and evil anymore. They should say the normal and the basket.
The basket twin.
That's
yeah.
And it's stop motion animation. I think that one's in.
That
Cat
scream,
People,
you guys. Wow.
the Paul Schrader of Cat People. I do. Like,
Yeah.
we're just fans.
We're
I don't know what
Schrader
to
suckers.
no. The fucking
even
gambler.
have our own
Give me
name.
a break.
All right. it was the card counter, and
Whatever.
the movie has its issues. But,
Oh yeah, that one nobody talked about.
Yeah.
Q the Winged Serpent, I think, has a chance. Swamp
Yeah.
Thing is probably out. Next of Kin is probably out. Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker.
In.
I think it's
baby.
in.
I think you would be well advised to keep it in.
The final matchup is Alone in the Dark. When the lights go out, the terror begins.
Sure.
I think that tells you everything you need to know. Versus Amityville 2, and it's not just Amityville 2. We do have The Possession. So it's not that it's about time, but at least we have some sort of subtitle to go along with it. Does anybody know anything about these two movies?
Amityville 2 is the incest Amityville.
Yes, I was about to say.
It's in.
Amityville 2 is the incest one, right? Yeah.
It turns out that Amityville might actually, I would have never thought this prior to like this current stage of my life. Amityville might be the best of the super horror. Well, Chucky's the best. Chucky's, I think, objectively,
Yes.
critically, like evolutionarily the best. But like of the, I think actually the one that has the most returns on your investment in terms of fun is the Amityville franchise. About Time, this one, the incest one, real hot Ryan Reynolds in the remake, and the
right.
Him
original.
as
A
a
lot
murderer
of-
is super sexy.
Just
A lot of Deadpool fans don't
cracking
remember.
a bunch of wood. Just so much
Yeah.
wood he was chopping.
Yeah,
I
he's
mean, you
chopping
don't
some
get
wood.
that torso by not chopping wood 20 hours a day. With,
A lot of-
with those pajama pants hanging on for their dear lives. No, this is the incest one.
Yeah.
And it is so, like, it's so weird. It's okay, so a thing that old movie, like classic old black and white movies love is, are they siblings or are they lovers? Like, that is very popular because women couldn't be independent. So, like, if you weren't under the care of your parents and you had a brother, well, your brother should probably go to take care of you. Like, I think it's like the uninvited. I remember the first time I watched that, they show up in like the cliffside seaside home where they're gonna live together, and I was like, oh, it's husband and wife. And then a couple minutes in the movie, it's like, oh, that is her brother. Never mind. Okay. And then in this one, so this starts playing, and I'm like, oh, why does that daughter's boyfriend live with this family? Is he like an orphan? Like, is that a home situation? And then it's like, no, this is but one family. This is but one family, and they're just making eyes at each other. And then when it finally culminates, you're like, the way it happens is like, you guys, you like to the girl, it's like, you know what's going on. What he's possessed at this point, so obviously he's filled with a demon. But he's like, take off your clothes, and she's like, okay, you, like, okay, I'll show you. It's like this, like, we're gonna sibling one up each other. She's like, fine,
Chicken
and just
fucking.
like shucks her nightdress on the bed, and it's like, that's not a dare. That's not
No-
a one-upping. What are you
No
doing?
truth, all dare.
I watch a lot of short films that it sound like things to this, so I kind of want to watch it.
Yeah, I
highly
wanna-
recommend.
Yeah.
Comparing it
But-
to most of the movies that I watch, is the sister doing laundry, and does she get stuck in the washer or dryer at any point?
Unfortunately, no. But mom does
here.
definitely glean by context cues that something's amiss with her kids. And but on the other side of the equation, like, I think Amityville 2 is definitely the sensation factor. Alone in the Dark is actually really good. Like, it starts out, you're like, what in the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest knockoff is this? And then, and you have escaped, like, asylum patients played by Martin Landau and Jack Palance. And
Oh shit!
they're really, these are really
Two
fucking
Academy Award winners.
Yeah.
really fucking good actors. And you have Donald Pleasance as the very woo-woo, like, head of the ward, their doctor. And they decide, like, a new doctor joins the ward, and these three main patients, two of which are Landau and Palance decide that the doctor they really liked, he's gone because this new doctor killed him. This new doctor killed him, so they have no choice but to kill the guy who killed their favorite doctor. And there is a mass blackout one night. And the security systems go down, the patients get out, and it turns basically into Straw Dogs. And it's really well done. The tension is great. The daughter in this movie is so fucking funny. Like, there's one part where she's like, God, like, at some point she's like, God, I hope nothing like this ever happens. She makes like some wry comment, and the dad's like, this is no time for joking. She's probably 9. She goes, who's joking? I was like, get this girl a cigarette and a glass of brown liquor. She's ready to hold it down at the end of the bar. And like, it just spooky, like intense, violent, because this is 1982. One of the third convict that gets out with the 2 more famous guys, his crime that he was in prison for is he's a serial child rapist. So like the ways in which this movie creates menace with the a bit more like frighteningly antiquated ways that we depicted villainy on screen at the time, like you fear at every moment, like, what's gonna happen to the little girl, in a way that like you're kind of pretty sure it's not gonna happen now in a movie, but in 1982 you're like, there's no laws here, there's nothing stopping any bad thing from happening here.
This is Reagan's films.
This is Reagan's genre cinema.
Anything can happen.
Producer Dave is giving me a memo right now, and it says that Alone in the Dark was directed by Jack Shoulder, the director of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, the queer horror for straight people.
Oh my God. For real?
Yeah.
That is a shocker. This movie is so much better than Nightmare 2. Wow.
Okay, yeah, so I don't know, guys, that one or the incest Amityville.
They offer such different things. I have such a hard time considering them against one another. They're so different. It's such a different night at the movies.
Wow. Okay. So, Mike, over/under. Let's say 64 movies are in the first round. Okay. Over/under. What is the over/under for amount of these movies that we talked about tonight that at least make it to the second round? We
3.
talked about 14 movies. 3? I'm taking the over, dude. Out of everything we talked about tonight.
I think there's 2 that are shoo-ins.
I would say I think there are 2 that are shoo-ins, and for me those 2 are Slumber Party Massacre and Butcher Baker, and everything else left a chance.
Okay, Taylor, let's do that then. What would be the 2 or 3 that like you really want to put your name on?
I mean, of the ones that we've talked about in this one, I would say honestly Halloween 3 I think is great.
I support you.
Also Slumber Party Massacre. And even though I haven't seen it, I've seen Brain Damage, so I know how I feel about that movie enough to be like, I think Basket Case is worth it.
I think if you know how you feel about Brain Damage, you know what you're you know what you're getting into with Basket Case.
Yeah, I previously had a shirt that was a Brain Damage like graphic tee that was many sizes too large for me, and I no longer have it. I think it got lost in a move, but it's just the little fucking worm from Brain Damage because it's so fucking weird. And I think this just even hearing the description of it, I was like, this sounds like Brain Damage. Like it sounds like the type of movie that Brain Damage.
So if you like, who would make a movie like Frankenhooker? This guy.
He's got an alleyway and a voice that is so much fun. I think that you can't go wrong with Basket Case.
You're not wrong. You're not. Again, I will speak to it certainly for it, like the way that it encapsulates a certain kind of moment in time and the possibility of 1982. There's a lot of merits there.
We put together a list of 236 movies for 1982 to enter into the bracket. 45 or almost 50 were horror. So we're talking about 20% of the movies that were on this list. Congratulations, horror.
Congratulations, horror. I love
Congratulations, horror.
I definitely think that we have a lot more information than we did going into the opening bracket. Taylor, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you?
Oh, I'm on I guess I'm on Twitter, but not as much recently. I'm at T Money Bagels pretty much everywhere. I'm doing root beer reviews mostly. So if you know of any good root beers that I haven't tried, you let me know.
You let me know.
Yeah, that's
have you
pretty
done
much
like
it.
Barks?
Yeah, obviously I've done Barks.
A&W.
A&W was the first one I did. You would know that if you were a real fan, so, you know.
Do you know what it stands for?
Always and wet.
That is correct. Jordan, thank you as well. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Jorcru, Jorcru, and you can find me, as you should know from this podcast already, on the Botcast with my fan-fucking-tastic co-host, Margot Carlson, who also did our theme song. So go listen to all of that.
And it's so, like, I had heard before the show came out that she did the theme song and then forgot and then listened to the opening episode. And
Were
it's so
you like,
clearly,
wait, what the fuck?
it's so clearly Margot. Like, it's like, oh, fuck, she's singing right now.
It's so clearly Margot, but also could be the Weepies is the thing.
Yeah.
So I was, it's I know how to make a good podcast, and I have good friends who are right there with me, serving material par excellence.
Mike, do you want to talk about where people can find you?
Yeah, you can find me over at the Superhero Show. If you're like, movies and films, I hate them all. Give me live action television based on comic books. There's a podcast for you, freak. It's called the Superhero Show, and it's delightful.
Thank you guys all so much. I'm more excited for this 82 bracket. So please tune in next week where all 64 movies, including fucking, what's it called? Blade
Runner?
Yeah, Blade.
Runner is a
Blade with Wesley Snipes.
Blade Runner 2 Trinity is in the bracket. All 64 movies will fight it out, including all 14 of these horror movies. For Mike, for Jordan, for Taylor, I am Ryan. And remember, keep watching those movies.